we were on the street, and the first thing we wanted to know, what happened to Lola and Michael and his parents and his sisters. And this is now Lola telling the story, because we couldn't find out, but she is telling the story. Their hiding place was a doghouse. In the yard, there was a doghouse. When you removed the floor of the dog, there was a step ladder, and there was room enough for 7 people to walk down into that hole, and they had provisions, food, and bedding for 7 people. Now she's telling what happened. As they were about to walk in to their hiding place, another capo, not such a nice capo, his name was Miller, walks up with his mother and his sister. And he says to Lola and Michael, I know about your hiding place in this doghouse, but unless you take my mother and my sister with you, I'm going to tell the authorities. Well, what's there to do? So obviously there was a little rambling. I mean, the mother says, leave me out. We had our life, and the older sister, you young married couple, your life ahead of you. And there was a big fight between them. My sister Lola and Michael wouldn't listen, and they made him go down, and they walked out. The 2 of them stayed out. There was only room for 7. Now there were 9. So they're walking the street when Farber, that friendly couple, meets them. Lola, Michael, what are you doing? Hide. Don't you know what's about to happen? So she and he tell him, Farber, the story, what happened with Miller, the couple, and they have no place to go. So he tells them, don't worry. Where my sister and her 2 children are hiding, follow me, there's room for you. So they followed him to a leather factory, a tannery. Above the tannery, there was a tank, a water tank, which they used to use that water to clean the hides. He tells Lola and Michael, my sister and her 2 children inside that tank, climb up. So they did. They climbed up, and then there were ropes inside. They lowered themselves with the ropes, and they saw his sister standing knee-deep in water. Now, mind you, it was in the wintertime. There was snow outside. Knee-deep in water, holding the infant. The infant was, I guess they gave it some kind of a sleeping pill or something to keep it quiet. And the other daughter was waist deep in water. And when they look, they saw little rats were swimming in the water, nibbling at their feet. Well, what can they do? There was no other choice. They had to go in there. So Michael picked up the older daughter, the girl, and Lola picked up the infant, and they were in that tank all night long, hearing the same thing we heard: shooting, screaming, yelling, dogs barking. This was going on all night. In fact, there were 2 Nazis walking up to the tank, and one of them said, let's check out the tank. The other one says, come on, it's late, nobody is there, probably ice cold with water. And somehow they left. They saved their life by not knowing, by not checking. And sure enough, when towards the morning, Farber gave them a signal on the tank. When you hear that knock, you will know the coast is clear, you can come out. So they walked out, straightening themselves out, getting... It wasn't easy being cooped up in that water without circulation. It took a while. But the first things that Lola and Michael wanted to do is go to the doghouse and check to see what happened to the mother and the sisters. And And when they came, this is what they found. I told you my sister Lola is an artist. She's the one who survived. Out of memory, in 1949, 1950, she made these pictures. And this is what they found. The doghouse, the dog was shot, and obviously the whole family in the snow. They were all killed. Marika, that little girl, her birthday was a month earlier, and Lola made her a doll. The doll is still in her hand. He took his family, he loaded, and Lola's holding them, they shouldn't fall off. You can still see Marika holding the doll. And he took them to the cemetery in Bochnia. The Bochnia cemetery was not too far. But he had to go uphill in the ice and snow. And he brought him up there. Now they found a shovel and they had to dig a grave. It wasn't easy on frozen ground. And they didn't have gloves, but they managed to excavate a grave, and they put the family inside the grave. Once everyone was in and they tried to cover them, this couple, Miller, walks up to them. He says, "It wasn't my fault." And it probably wasn't, because his own mother and his sister were killed. They must have, their dogs, the German shepherds must have sniffed out the people in the doghouse. But this graves that you dug for your family, I wanted for my mother and my sister. You're going to have to take everybody out and find another place for them. Well, they really had no choice. What can they do? So they picked up everybody, put them back in the wheelbarrow, and they found another place near the fence, and they had to start all over again. While this is going on, and he put his mother and sister into that grave and closed it up, they heard a jeep pulling up towards the cemetery, and two SS men jump out of this jeep, and they were yelling, "Morris Miller! Morris Miller!" And he, of course, very obedient, he says, "Jawohl, here I am." They walk up to him, they pull out the revolver, and they shot him dead. I guess he must have seen too many atrocities, and they didn't want to leave a witness with actually seeing all that happening. This is what happened. From there, after they buried the family, they made themselves a little mark to know where exactly it was. And they had to go back into the ghetto